My name's Caroline Poynton. I'm recording this today because I'm not copyrighting YouTube. I'm paying attention about King Charles. And this lad's only young, bless. But he's quite good.
Watching the news over the past few days,
about
you've
King
been kind of
Charles
following
changing his religion.
right-wing accounts
I've been
and
right all
kind
along.
of parties,
I
smaller
tried to
fringe
deny
parties
me.
on X. You will have seen that there is a lot of
Telling me to
controversy
change
surrounding the monarchy, specifically
They tell
King
me I
Charles
skip.
and his relationship with Islam. There's been a few calls, especially from Britain First and Paul Golding, that they want to now abolish the monarchy because it has become entwined with Islam. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about
It's just a bit fair on
the kind of the problem, the kind of why people are taking issue with the monarchy over Islam, and kind of the monarchy so-called Islam problem, how deep it goes, and then kind of what people are proposing and what I would personally do to solve the problem. So first up, kind of the big issue that has kind of sparked all this is King Charles' refusal to have an Easter message. Now it's important to say that having an Easter message is not a regular kind of tradition for the monarch to do. It is kind of very irregular. The monarchy will sometimes deliver an Easter message. It's not like the Christmas address or the Christmas message where that happens every year and it's long-standing tradition. It is not a regular tradition to have the monarch deliver a message for Easter. However, the kind of specific part is that King Charles had a written message to commemorate the beginning of Ramadan and then the Eid, the kind of holy holiday for Islam, marking the end of Ramadan and fasting is his big holiday and all that. So he has commemorated the beginning and the end of Ramadan, a big, two massive Muslim holidays, kind of fasting events, but has refused a massive Christian holiday marking the resurrection of Christ, which I find really strange. I mean, the monarchy is so closely entwined with religion. I mean, the monarch himself or herself is chosen by God. They are the representative of God on earth. That has been the tradition and the viewpoint of the monarchy for thousands of years.
Yep. Well, it
was,
but
kind
it
of
ain't anymore. But
that viewpoint that the monarch is picked by the Lord Jesus Christ has kind of shaped British and English views and Scottish and Welsh views for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years. It is so kind of such an ancient cultural link between the British monarchy or the British monarchies in the past before the Union and Jesus Christ and the Christian faith. So to kind of celebrate Islam and not Christianity just seems really out of the blue. It seems completely unnecessary. It seems like a bit of a spit in the face to British culture and traditions and our heritage. To me, I think it's disgusting, to be honest. I don't understand why it isn't a regular thing where the monarch does have an Easter message every single Easter. It's a massive holiday. It's a massive Christian holiday marking the resurrection of Christ. If Christmas is a massive holiday marking the birth of Christ, I think the second birth of Christ is just as important, if not more monumental, because it marked how he died for our sins and then rose back from the dead, came back down to earth to continue his message to humanity. I think that is arguably more important than Christmas.
When anybody speaks, because they don't want the bullshit coming out.
I think it's a beautiful message, and it definitely should have a regular message like Christmas does, and just specifically so blatantly spit in the face of Christian and British traditions in this way in favour of Islam is, in my opinion, disgusting. It is an absolute betrayal.
And King Charles is the most horrible fucker in the first place,
of being pro-Islam. I mean, he specifically always praises Islam.
Yeah.
Like in his 2025 Maundy...
And before then.
I believe I'm so sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Maundy Thursday message. He stated that Jesus' love reflects a deep human instinct echoed in Islam and other religious traditions. So King Charles believes that Jesus' love is reflected by Islam. By the way, every single Islamic controlled nation disrespects women to the nth degree, doesn't provide women with any rights, are very typically very violent societies. Muslim communities are typically violent communities. You know, that a large proportion of terrorist activity in the world, more specifically Britain, is conducted via Muslims. I don't where does this logic come from? Are we looking at the same religion? King Charles, are we looking at the same religion? I don't think we are. You were talking about Islam reflecting Jesus' love. Jesus tells us to kind of love our neighbour, not to cheat on our wife, not to kind of commit adultery and all this stuff. But in Islamic countries, a man can commit adultery on his wife and then have her stoned because of it. I don't understand the logic at all. Yeah, I'm very speechless, to be honest. When I was doing more research on this topic, after seeing the backlash online that Charles was having, after I read that message, I was speechless and disgusted. Jesus' love in no way echoes or is echoed by Islam. No way. Christians and Christianity teach it the narrative is that kind of God is my God, and it's kind of the one I follow, the one I believe in. It's kind of doesn't necessarily mean that I'm right, doesn't mean that you're wrong, doesn't mean that kind of he's the only God and stuff like that. Islam reflects and distinctly states that Allah is the only God and is the final God. So Christianity opens kind of respect for other religions and kind of opens up respect for kind of even atheists as well. Islam just distinctly says that all other religions are false religions, all other gods and prophets are false gods and prophets. Allah is the only God, He is the final God, Islam is the final religion. Completely different narratives and mindsets. In no way does Islam echo Jesus' message. King Charles has also recorded multiple video contributions for kind of Ramadan and Eid inside royal palaces, inside historical Christian sites where Christian monarchs chosen by God are residing, and he is now bringing in this violent, anti-Christian, barbaric religion into these places, and I don't get it. I don't understand why. What's the point? It looked like I shimmied there. I'm kind of. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't get it. Why are we usurping Christianity for Islam? I really don't understand. Charles, what are you doing, bro? Respectfully, I don't get it. He needs to abdicate immediately. That's kind of my viewpoint on Charles. He needs to abdicate immediately. But the problem does go deeper than Charles. And Charles's abdication would not fix the problem, because here is a list of other members of the royal family who hold publicly pro-Islamic views, have kind of quite strongly interacted with Muslim communities, visited mosques, celebrated Eid and Ramadan and all that stuff. So Prince William, the next in line for the throne, Princess Anne, Prince Edward, Sophie, and Harry, before he stepped back from the monarchy. So clearly there is a quite deep-rooted problem within the royal family. There's a deep-rooted Islam problem. Now, I'm not sure whether they're just doing this publicly but don't actually believe it, to try and kind of make them not look outdated, to try and make them look more modern and diverse and all that shit. I don't know. I hope it's that. I hope that when we get a proper right-wing, pro-Christian, restore government in power, they will completely change up the rhetoric. They will kind of go, yeah, we were just doing that to try and appease people, but now we've seen that Christianity is wanted. We are going to back it completely. But I don't really see that happening, to be honest. So, the solution, the kind of main narrative to solve this problem, if people are talking about it on the right, like I said in the intro, people like Britain First and Paul Golding, they believe that the solution is to abolish the monarchy. I want to make this absolutely clear. I firmly disagree. Abolishing the monarchy is a stupid thing to say. It is a stupid move in so many different ways. The British monarchy is deeply rooted in British culture and kind of history. When you think of England and the UK, you think of the monarchy. When someone says the word monarch, king or queen or crown, people think of the United Kingdom. It's the United Kingdom, by the way. Even our name is rooted in our monarchy. It's so entwined with our history and our culture and our image and our name and everything that it would be so ridiculous to get rid of it. We're eliminating thousands of years of history, of ancient history, on the British Isles for our Anglo, kind of Saxon, English culture, Scottish culture, Welsh culture. Back when kind of the monarchy in Wessex launched the crusade to get out the Viking invaders in the Danelaw, it reflects the modern struggle that Britain is currently undergoing, the native people revolting and fighting back against these Viking barbaric invaders. There is massive similarities, and that's the monarchy. The monarchy was doing that. The ancient the first kings of England were doing that before there was a King of England title. This was happening. This struggle back then established the English monarchy that was respected throughout Europe. The British crown that ruled a quarter of the world, that still rules over and is the head of state for a large portion of the world. Canada, Australia, I believe New Zealand, Jamaica, places like that. Our monarchy is still technically, it links us to the Anglosphere, to Kanzuk, to that kind of thing. So to get rid of it is such a destruction and terrible move in the wrong direction. I mean, these rivaling parties, Britain First and Paul Golding, are trying to promote the preservation of English ethnicity, culture and tradition, and then they're proposing to abolish the monarchy. It doesn't make any sense in my mind whatsoever. So my solution, and a second point, is that if you want to look at it from you want to take out the tradition part, the monarchy bring in so much state revenue through tourism. People come to visit London for Buckingham Palace, for the crown jewels, to potentially see the king or the queen. It brings in money, it brings in revenue. So not only is it massively cultural, it's also massively fiscally beneficial as well. So my personal solution, not to abolish the monarchy, but instead a new system for the line of succession. So it's not the next member in line, it's the next pro-British, pro-Christian, patriotic member in line. So let's say Charles abdicates, William is the pro-Islamic as he is now, but William's son, let's say, is old enough to take the throne, but his son is massively pro-Christian, pro-British, patriotic. He would skip William and go straight to his son. I think that'd be a way better solution. It preserves our culture, preserves our history, preserves British and Christian traditions in the country, and it unroots the Islamic problem in there will not be a pro-Islamic, pro-foreigner, anti-Christian, anti-British monarch sitting on the throne. There would only be a patriotic figure sitting on the throne, heading the crown.
I'm not against anybody else's religion or colour.
In my opinion, that is the only solution.
The only people that are doing this and driving this is the Queen King, the government,
the only viable one that I can come up with.
People
that
are driving division
a little bit angry, a little bit ranty there as well.
And hatred towards
let me know what you think. Your thoughts. Do you agree with my point, or do you think the monarchy should be abolished? Do you agree with me that is massively
in fact, he's the cause of it. He's not making it better. No, I don't know if it should be abolished, but he's the cause of it. That's that. He fucking is.
Queen Camilla left empty-handed by Queen Elizabeth II's cunning move? Why is Prince Edward's title more than just an honor? While King Charles III is critically ill, a lawyer's letter reveals an anti-invalidation clause that helped Edward thwart Camilla's ambitions. How did Queen Elizabeth set a trap in the law to protect Edward? The legal letter bearing the seal of the Edinburgh solicitors landed on King Charles III's desk at Buckingham Palace. The institution realized a terrifying truth. A royal title is not a ribbon. It is a loaded weapon. For 3 decades, the palace panned past Prince Edward, seeing only a quiet man in a loud family. They failed to realize that the late Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip had built a legal fortress around their youngest son, a fortress designed to protect the crown's private wealth from the very woman who now sits beside the king.
He would have been a lot better than the king.
The story begins on the 19th of November 1947. King George VI, sensing the massive shifts in the British Empire, issued a letters patent, the highest form of sovereign command,
he's
to
worse
create
than
the
Prince
Dukedom of
Andrew.
Edinburgh for Philip
I mean, they're all
Mountbatten.
bullying Prince
At the
Andrew. I
time, it
think it
seemed
could be fucking
straightforward.
Charles.
However, the fine print of that document, drafted with the
And I
precision
kind
of
of
a
do like
constitutional
Prince Andrew,
surgeon,
my own one.
contained provisions that were never meant to expire. Most royal titles are honorific, they carry prestige, but no bite. The Edinburgh dukedom was different. Philip and Elizabeth, in a rare display of long-term strategic planning, ensured that this specific title carried reversionary interests and vesting protections. In plain English, they attached legal clause to the title that do not dissolve when the holder dies. Instead, these provisions enter a state of abeyance, a legal hibernation waiting for a new holder to wake them up. When Prince Philip passed away in 2021, the palace assumed these powers died with him. They viewed the title as a vacant slot on an organizational chart. But law, unlike sentiment, does not grieve. The 1,947 letters patent remained active in the archives, holding secret commands that only a direct successor, handpicked by the sovereign, could trigger. In June 2022, during the height of the Platinum Jubilee, Queen Elizabeth II did something the public read as a mother's tender gift. She formally conferred the Dukedom of Edinburgh upon Prince Edward. The palace announcement used the word conferred rather than granted. In the world of high-stakes constitutional law, this distinction is a tectonic shift. To grant is to give something new. To confer is to transfer an existing legal instrument along with every encumbrance and power attached to it. By choosing Edward the son, who had shown 30 years of unwavering, scandal-free loyalty, the Queen was handing him the keys to the vault. Why the secrecy? Because the Queen was a student of history and a master of palace internal politics. She had watched the rise of Camilla. She had seen the influence the now Queen consort held over Charles. Elizabeth knew that once she was gone, the private estates of Sandringham and Balmoral assets worth hundreds of millions of pounds would be vulnerable to administrative restructuring that could alienate her other children or drain the family's private legacy.
There you go.
She turned
That's what he's
Edward
doing.
into a legal failsafe. By attaching specific
King Charles is
management rights and anti-invalidation clauses to the Edinburgh title, she ensured that Edward possessed a power similar to that of Princess Anne, the ability to activate royal bylaws that can effectively block or freeze a king's decision regarding private property if that decision is deemed detrimental to the hereditary line. Fast forward to late 2023, King Charles III, moving with the efficiency of a new monarch, began consolidating the royal portfolio. He made high-value decisions regarding the income streams of the Duchy of Lancaster and the private Scottish estates.
If that's the case,
He moved fast, perhaps too fast, likely influenced by a desire to streamline the firm under the guidance of his closest advisor, Camilla. Then, the letter arrived. It was not a brotherly note.
So that's
It
what
was
I'm
a
saying. They
formal
had William
communication
to be
from
the
external
king.
legal counsel
After Queen
representing the
Elizabeth,
Duke
not
of
Charles.
Edinburgh. It laid out, in chillingly precise legal language,
King Charles,
that the king's recent
he's
decisions
ruined it,
regarding
Queen
estate
Elizabeth.
management
Well, you ain't
were
had
in
to look.
direct
That's why she's
violation
angry.
of
That's
the
why they've done what they've done.
1,947
Because she's
provisions
angry
now
at
held
Charles.
by
This is
Edward.
about
The
Charles.
palace went
This is
quiet.
King. This is Queen
Not the
Elizabeth.
quiet of respect,
What I've just
but
said.
the quiet
All
of a
them
room
up
that has
there
just
are
realized
very
the floor
angry.
is rigged with explosives. Charles,
She's been
already
integrated
battling a
up
grueling
there
schedule
in
in
hell
the early stages of a serious cancer
for
diagnosis,
what she's done, and
was
now she's
suddenly
going to have to
faced
put
with a legal
Charles in
challenge he
hell.
could not dismiss. He could not simply order Edward to stop, because Edward was
And-
not
and-
acting
yeah,
on a
and
whim,
he's-
he was
well,
acting
he's-
on a mandatory secret order left by
he's
their
in a
mother.
lot of
This is where the
shit
drama
things,
ignites
Charles.
the public imagination.
More than we know.
The timing of the letter arriving as the king began his battle with cancer has split the court
No,
into
he
two
hasn't.
camps. They argue Edward is the ultimate protector. He waited 30 years in the shadows, enduring the weakness labels from the press, specifically so he could be the gray man who saved the monarchy from its own internal overreach. In this view, Edward is the hero Elizabeth, trained him to be the one son who values the institution over the individual. Critics point to the timing. Why now? Why force a legal confrontation while the king is physically vulnerable? They suggest Edward is leveraging the Queen's ghost power to secure his own financial future, fearing that under a Camilla-influenced reign, his branch of the family would be pushed to the fringes of the Windsor map. To understand why this title matters, one must look at who held it before. From the Duke of Gloucester to the naval hero Prince Philip, the Edinburgh dukedom has always been reserved for the stalwarts, those whose primary duty is the stability of the throne's foundation. Edward's path to this title was not guaranteed. Reports in 2021 suggested Charles wanted to keep the title for himself or let it wither away. But the Queen's intervention in 2022 was a sovereign command that overrode Charles's preferences. She saw in Edward the steady hand, the man who ran a production company, married Sophie Rhys-Jones, and never once leaked a secret to the tabloids. He was the only one worthy of the 1,947 mandate because he was the only one who wouldn't use it for vanity. The Queen may be gone, but through this legal maneuver, she remains the most powerful person in the room. This is the invisible hand of a monarch who ruled for 70 years. She knew that the law is the only thing that survives a change in the crown. By using the letters patent of 1,947, she ensured that her youngest son had the power to protect the Windsor bloodline even when she was no longer there to say no to Camilla's ambitions. As the king's lawyers scrambled to review documents they hadn't read in decades, one thing became clear. The Duke of Edinburgh is no longer the forgotten prince. He is the guardian of the fine print, and he has just activated a clause that could change the British monarchy forever. While the world watched the pageantry of the Platinum Jubilee in 2022, a cold legal calculation was being finalized behind the velvet curtains of Windsor Castle. Queen Elizabeth II, a monarch who had outlasted 14 U.S. presidents and saw the rise and fall of empires, was not merely celebrating 70 years on the throne, she was fortifying the future. She knew that her eldest son, Charles, lived in a world of romantic idealism and administrative speed, often heavily influenced by the woman he had fought decades to bring into the royal fold, Camilla Parker Bowles.
Why?
The Camilla factor had long been a point of quiet concern for the late Queen and Prince Philip. It wasn't about personal animosity, it was about institutional preservation. As Camilla transitioned from Duchess of Cornwall to Queen Consort, her influence over the king's ear grew exponentially. The Queen feared that Camilla's vision for a slimmed-down monarchy was less about efficiency and more about consolidating the king's private wealth assets like Sandringham and the Balmoral estates away from the younger branches of the Windsor tree, specifically targeting the legacy intended for Edward and Anne. To block this, the Queen reached back into the archives for the 1,947 letters patent. This was the masterstroke. By conferring the Dukedom of Edinburgh on Edward, she wasn't just giving him a title, she was activating a trustee power embedded by Prince Philip himself. Philip, a man of military precision, had insisted that the 1,947 document include inalienable reversionary rights. This means that certain royal lands and income streams are not owned by the king to do with as he pleases. Instead, they are held in a legal state where the Duke of Edinburgh acts as a constitutional sentry. The Queen and Philip purposely detailed these provisions to ensure that no consort, no matter how influential, could persuade the king to sell, lease, or redirect the private family wealth that had been set aside for the sovereign's children. Prince Edward, often dismissed as the quietest man in the family tree, was the only one deemed worthy of this secret order. Why? Because history had shown that the heir, Charles, and the spare, Andrew, were too compromised by their own dramas.
Yeah.
Edward, however, had spent 30 years performing forgettable duties with a stoic loyalty that mirrored his mother's. The Queen saw in Edward the same quality Philip possessed, the ability to hold the line. By receiving the 1947
because he would have come out and
mandate,
said,
Edward
done
became a
his
living
speech,
check
you
on
see,
the
he
king's
would
power.
hold
Like
the line.
Princess Anne,
That's what I'm
who
saying. He
manages
would
the
hold
royal
the line,
stables and
and
vast
he would
agricultural
be
interests
the
with an iron
official
fist,
king.
Edward was given the legal standing to counter mandate decisions.
Whereas
If
King
Camilla
Charles is
suggested
not
a
official.
restructuring of the Balmoral
He's
income
not
to favor her own interests
he's
or
in the
those of her
Bible.
non-royal children,
Whereas this guy would be
Edward's
seen in
lawyers
the
could
Bible.
and did produce
And
the
he would be official.
1,947 documents to say, the law
I mean,
forbids this.
alright,
The most explosive detail within the
let's just say official.
1,947 provisions is the anti-invalidation clause. In ordinary
Like I said
English
before,
law,
why
a
would he
king's
marry
word
Queen
can often rewrite
his
palace
fucking
policy.
cousin that
But a letters
Why
patent
would
is a
you get
sovereign
rid
act
of
of law
Queen,
that stands
Princess
above the
Diana to
personal
have that?
whims of a sitting monarch. The Queen ensured
Because
that the
change his
specific rights
religion.
granted to the Duke of Edinburgh regarding the private estates were non-dissolvable. When King Charles began his efficiency drive in 2023, he moved with the assumption
Queen
that his
Elizabeth
authority was
might not
absolute.
even know,
He did
which I
not
think she
realize
did.
that by granting Edward the
She did
title,
know.
he had effectively rearmed his younger
And that's why
brother
she
with a
didn't want
veto
him to be the
power
king.
over the very assets he was trying to reorganize. This was the Queen's Vung Mut Quinlook, her power from beyond the grave. She knew that Charles would
Yeah.
feel obligated by sentiment to give Edward the title, and she used that very sentiment to trap the king in a legal cage of her own making. As the legal team representing Edward formally challenged the king's management of the Scottish estates, the palace split. The tension was palpable. The Camilla circle viewed Edward's move as a betrayal, a calculated opportunistic strike,
No.
at a time when the king was physically
No, he
weakened
wasn't.
by cancer treatments. They argued that Edward was
No, he
using
wasn't.
ancient,
That
dusty
was-
scrolls to
that's
hold
a
the modern
joke, that's a
monarchy
lie.
hostage for financial gain.
Yeah, I've
However,
got cancer.
the
Where's the
loyalists
evidence?
saw it differently. To them, Edward was the ultimate
Why haven't you
realist.
seen him in
He
hospital?
wasn't attacking his brother. He was defending
Why
the
couldn't he
crown's
give a message
integrity.
in a hospital?
He was
Caroline?
fulfilling the secret order handed to him
To
by
the
his
people.
parents. The drama wasn't just about money. It was a battle for the soul of the Windsor
Okay, you might say
legacy.
it's personal.
Was
it
Edward a
might
great
be,
man
but
taking advantage of a sick king? Or was he the guardian of the fine
No,
print,
he wasn't
standing
taking-
as
he's
the
not
last
taking
line of
advantage, he's not
defense
even
against the
bothered, there's nothing wrong with
Camillification
him.
of the royal estates? As the legal skirmish
even-
intensified within the
Okay.
soundproofed walls of Buckingham Palace,
If he
the
has
true
got
nature of
cancer,
the Edinburgh Mandate
okay,
began to
but
emerge
that
from the
does not mean
shadows
that-
of the
then if he's got cancer, he shouldn't be the king.
1,947
because
letters
he's obviously
patent.
not well enough
This
to
was
be
never
the king.
merely about a title
Not
to
fit
be
enough to
printed
be
on
the king.
stationery.
So he
It
should
was
have
about the
stepped back. If
custodianship
he's
of
got
the
cancer,
Windsor
if he
bloodline.
knew he had cancer,
Queen
he should have
Elizabeth
stepped back from
II
being
and
the
Prince
king.
Philip understood a fundamental truth that Charles, in his
He
pursuit
didn't have
of a
to take the role.
modernized,
He could have
slimmed down
passed it down
monarchy,
to William.
had seemingly overlooked. Private property is the only true independence a royal has. Without the ancestral lands
Or
of
he could have
Sandringham
passed it
and
down now
Balmoral,
to
the
William by
monarch's
now.
children are merely tenants of the state. The Queen's secret order to Edward was designed to ensure that these lands remained a shield for the family, protected from the administrative curiosity of those who did not share the Windsor DNA, specifically the advisors and interests
Yeah,
surrounding
the
Queen Camilla.
DNA. That's the king again, Queen.
1,947 documents
Then
contain a
all
rare
this
legal
shit.
mechanism
Now
known
we
as
have
an
to pay for it.
irrevocable covenant of management.
Well, we
When
have
Prince
to pay to
Philip
find
helped
out
draft
on
these
DNA.
provisions decades ago, he insisted on a clause that allows the Duke of Edinburgh
Come
to
on.
act as a co-trustee
Why do I have
over
to say on
specific
that
private
thing?
income
Fucking
streams. This power does not
Find
belong
out
to the
that I'm
individual as a
Caroline
person,
Poynton.
but to the dukedom itself. Because the title was conferred upon Edward in 2022, he inherited a legal standing that allows him to freeze or veto any structural
Why do I
changes
have
to
to
the
buy a
estates that might
passport? Why
disadvantage
do
the
I have to buy a
hereditary line.
birth
This is the
certificate
power of the
to say
century.
that I'm
Just
Caroline
as Princess
Poynton?
Anne holds a specialized authority over the
Or
royal
who my mum
stables
might
and
be, or who my
agricultural
father might
legacies,
be. Why?
Edward was granted a
'Cause of
financial
them.
veto. When King Charles, potentially influenced by Camilla's desire to consolidate assets to fund a new
Everything
era
to
of
do
the
with King
monarchy,
Charles.
moved to streamline the Balmoral revenues in 2023, he hit a legal brick wall. Edward's lawyers produced the 1,947 mandate,
No,
proving that the
okay.
king literally lacked the authority to dissolve these specific provisions.
Yeah, it's
The
not
Queen
well,
had
is
built
it?
a
So
failsafe
how can
into
he
the
have
law.
any?
The king can rule the country, but the Duke of Edinburgh guards the family's private
Well,
gold.
he can.
The selection of
Because
Edward
he's
for
not
this
well,
role
he's
was a
got cancer,
masterclass in character
He's not fit
assessment by
enough.
the late Queen. To
You're
hold
not
such a
fit enough
veto
to
power
do
requires a man
the
of
job.
absolute discretion and zero
Then
vanity.
You should be
Historically,
struck
the
off.
dukedom of
Well, you should
Edinburgh
be
has
told
been
to
held by men of steel
leave.
Prince Alfred, the naval prince, and Prince Philip, the modernizer. They
So
were
he hasn't
men
got
who
cancer.
understood that
He's
their
a
role
lion.
was to support the center,
That was just
not to
stop
outshine it.
people having a
Edward
go.
proved his worthiness
Yeah.
through 30 years of invisibility. While
There's the
Charles and
Queen,
Andrew
Queen,
were
Queen
embroiled in
Elizabeth
public
coming back to
scandals
haunt
that
him.
bled
I've
the
just
monarchy's
said
prestige,
that.
Edward
I
stayed
just
in the
said
quiet
he
zone.
sees
He accepted
fucking
the
Hitler
weakness
in the mirror.
narrative from the
King
tabloids
Charles.
without complaint, all while building a record of
And
30
the
years of
devil
faultless
poltergeist,
service.
isn't
He was the only child the Queen could trust with a loaded legal weapon, because she knew he would only fire it in defense of the institution, never for personal glory. When the formal legal letter arrived at the palace, it triggered an immediate information blackout. King
Well, he should
Charles,
be allowed- he
managing
should be
his
king.
cancer diagnosis and the heavy burden of the
Bullshit.
crown, found himself in a paradox.
Heavy burden of the
To
crown.
fight Edward
so he should have
publicly
been
would
king.
be to admit that the late Queen had shackled his power from the grave. To surrender
Somebody's done that
privately would mean
purpose,
admitting
they
that
could be
Camilla's
king then.
influence over the estates had been legally
Maybe he's
checked.
not even here.
This
He's
created
dead.
the central tension of the era. Is Edward the
Queen
realist or
Elizabeth
the
died before they
opportunist?
said, so I think
Supporters see a
she's dead.
man fulfilling a sacred vow
Is
to his
King
dying
Charles
mother
actually
to protect
dead?
the family's
Died.
core. Critics see a man using his brother's illness as a tactical window to assert financial dominance.
Nah.
But the 1,947 letters patent remains indifferent to opinion. They say what they say in ink, and the Vongmark Queen Lurk, the power of the absent queen, continues to dictate the terms of the Windsor's private survival. In the late months of 2023, as the winter mist settled over the turrets of Windsor Castle, a structural tremor shook the foundations of the British monarchy, not from a public scandal or a political uprising, but from the silent, ink-stained pages of a document drafted 75 years prior. When King Charles III received the formal legal dispatch from the council representing the Duke of Edinburgh, the atmosphere within the firm shifted.
I don't think they can override that, so it doesn't matter if he's got cancer or whatever.
The king, already navigating
If Queen
the
Elizabeth
physical and emotional toll of a rigorous cancer diagnosis, found himself staring at a legal ghost. The 1,947 letters patent,
if that document's a legal document,
King George VI to
then
Prince
it
Philip,
should be
was not merely a historical record of a title being granted. It was discovered to be an active, binding institutional override. Most royal scholars and palace insiders had long operated under a comfortable assumption that royal titles are honorific, carrying social prestige, but no functional power over the monarch's will. However, the 1,947 document meticulously reviewed by Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip during the final decades of her reign contained a hard-coded provision. This provision specifically stated that the holder of the Edinburgh dukedom acts as a perpetual guardian of the private estates of the bloodline. Unlike the Crown Estate, which is managed by the government, the private lands of Sandringham and Balmoral are the personal property of the Windsors. Under the 1,947 mandate, the Duke of Edinburgh was granted a reversionary interest and a negative covenant. In legal terms, this means that while the king owns the land, he cannot make significant structural changes, sell-offs, or administrative redirections of the income without the explicit consent of the Duke of Edinburgh. The drama reached its peak in late 2023 and early 2024, centered on a single, uncomfortable reality: the Camilla contingency. Sources close to the legal review suggest that the Queen and Philip grew increasingly concerned about the modernization plan spearheaded by Charles, which many feared was being influenced by Queen Camilla's circle. The fear was not just about modernization, but about the potential alienation of the Windsor legacy. If the king were to consolidate the private wealth of the family into a singular, streamlined king's purse, the other children, Edward and Anne, could effectively be evicted from their heritage or see their financial independence curtailed. Elizabeth II, the absent power, knew that she could not stop Charles from becoming king, nor could she prevent him from listening to his consort, but she could legalize a check on his power. By conferring the Edinburgh title on Edward in June 2022 at the Platinum Jubilee, she switched on the 1,947 protections. She knew that Charles, bound by tradition and a sense of duty to his father's memory, would never refuse to give Edward the title. By doing so, Charles unknowingly signed away his absolute authority.
Then he's going to get haunted by
what the king's legal team discovered, to their horror, was that the 1,947 provisions contained an anti-invalidation clause. This means that even a sovereign command from the king cannot strike down the Duke of Edinburgh's rights. The only way to dissolve these rights would be through an act of parliament, a move that would trigger a constitutional crisis and expose the family's private finances to public scrutiny. This is the secret power Edward now carries. Much like Princess Anne, who has long held an untouchable authority over the royal agricultural and equestrian interests, acting as the iron shield of the family's traditions, Edward has been transformed into the financial century. When he sent that legal letter in late 2023, he was not asking his brother for a favor. He was notifying the king that his recent attempts to reorganize the Balmoral income streams were legally void under the 1,947 mandate. Why did the Queen choose Edward? To hold a veto over a king requires a man of extraordinary discretion and psychological fortitude. Historically, the Dukedom of Edinburgh has been held by figures who represented the solid core, from Prince Alfred to Philip himself. Edward, through 30 years of invisible service,
them.
proved he
and
was
it
the only
wouldn't.
one
I
who
was gonna
wouldn't
say you
use
don't
this
have to like
power
them
for a
really,
coup
agree
or for
with everything, do
vanity.
you?
He is the man who showed up when the cameras weren't watching. He is the man who
Love
endured
within
decades
your
of being
heart.
called the weak link while
Liking
secretly being
somebody,
trained by his mother to
like
be the
saying,
final
you
failsafe.
know, on the
His worthiness
outside.
lies in his patience. He
They're
waited
just a
until
shell
the
on the
very moment
outside,
the
and that's what she
institution was
don't
at
like
risk
with
of a
King Charles. She hates
Camilla-influenced
King Charles doing that,
deviation
but she don't
to
like the
pull the
outside. The way he is.
1,947 trigger.
The
As the
shell on
news
the
of this
inside
legal
to him
friction
is the
began to
devil.
leak through back channels, the public
Poltergeist.
debate ignited. Edward is the ultimate loyalist. He is protecting the Queen's final wishes and ensuring that the
Good.
Windsor family remains a
Well,
family,
thank you,
not
at
just
least
a
one of
corporate
them.
brand managed by Charles and
Because
Camilla.
Charles
He
is
is the hero
protecting
who
Queen
holds the
Elizabeth
line
and the
when the king is
royal
too compromised to
heritage
see
and
the
everything.
danger. The
He's
timing
not
is
protecting
brutal.
the country.
Sending a legal challenge while your brother is fighting
He's
cancer and the
no,
Princess
he's
of
not
Wales
fighting
is
cancer,
recovering
he's
from her
lying.
own health struggles seems like a tactical ambush. Critics argue Edward is securing his slice of the pie before the rules of the game change forever. When the palace
belongs to
went quiet
William and
after
Harry.
receiving the letter, it was the silence of a trapped
I reckon.
institution.
It should belong
Charles,
to William
a
and
man
Harry.
of profound institutional respect,
Should all be
realized
for the
that his mother had
grandchildren, which is William
outmaneuvered
and
him from
Harry.
the grave. The Vung Mark Queen lurk, the power of the Vung
Because
Mark,
even though
absent.
Queen
Queen was
Elizabeth
now
is the
speaking through
mother,
Edward's lawyers.
your
The
grandchildren, I reckon, are just as important
1,947
as your
letters patent
children.
were no longer irrelevant.
As a
They were
grandparent,
the
I
current
think
law of the House
your
of Windsor.
grandchildren
And
are
Prince
more
Edward,
important
the
to
once
you than
forgotten
your
son,
children.
had just become the most powerful sentry in the United Kingdom.
Or
He
just
doesn't
as
need to speak to the
important.
press. He just needs to hold the document. The battle for the royal estates had begun.
That's why I don't
and
see
for the
Prince
first time in
Edward.
his life, the quiet prince was the one holding all the cards. When the legal letter from Prince Edward's representatives
Yeah, and I
arrived
think
at
he's the one
Buckingham
that's not
Palace
been
in
with
late
Epstein
2023, the reaction was not one of familial
I mean, he
irritation,
might have
but of
seen Epstein.
institutional
I'm
alarm.
not saying he
For
hasn't,
the first
but
time
he's
in the
not
modern
been
era,
under his.
a sitting king found
under all
himself
of that, has
legally
he?
checked by a
Too
sibling
much
using a
corruption.
document from the previous century. King Charles III, an
He is the
institutionalist by
quiet one,
nature,
Edward, isn't he?
did not simply dismiss the claim. Instead, the palace took the unprecedented step of
Andrew and
retaining
King
external
Charles
legal
have
counsel
always
specialists in
been the
constitutional property
loudest.
law and ancient peerage
Like me,
rights
suppose.
to conduct an urgent review of the
But I'm not
1,947
the wrong
letters
one in
patent.
my
This was
family.
the silent blackout. The king realized that his internal legal team, focused on the day-to-day administration of the crown, had completely missed the legal tripwire his parents had laid decades ago. The core of the dispute centers on the management of Sandringham and
You don't
Balmoral.
deserve it.
Under the influence
You
of the
don't deserve
slimmed-down
shit.
monarchy philosophy often attributed to the
He's a
Strategic
spoiled
Council of Queen
bastard.
Camilla, Charles had moved to centralize the income from these
He
estates
done this
into
to
a
Prince
singular
Andrew as well, I
administrative
think.
pool. The goal was ostensibly
He's thrown
efficiency,
Prince Andrew under
but the
bus as
legal
well and
reality
everything,
was a
and I'm
consolidation
doing
of
him
power.
on Katie.
Edward's
I'm
lawyers
doing
argued that this consolidation violated
No
the
wonder Prince
mandatory
Harry's the way he
distribution
is.
clauses embedded in the 1947 mandate. These
But
clauses
that's
were
like
designed
it. And
specifically
then
to prevent
fucking
any consort or advisor
Never-
from diverting the family's private wealth
Jeez.
away from the direct bloodline.
Good.
By invoking these ancient rights, Edward effectively placed a legal lien on the king's reorganization plans. He
No, I'm
wasn't just
glad.
asking for money, he was asserting a right of consent.
Yeah.
Every decision Charles made regarding the private estates now required the Duke of Edinburgh's
Good.
signature. This was
Good,
the
Edward.
anti-invalidation
Don't get
power
bullied
in
by
full
him.
effect, a check on the
He's
king
a
that
bully.
even the king's own diagnosis
No,
could
yeah,
not
'cause he's
cause.
bullying him,
The
Edward,
timing
not
of
me,
this legal
bullying him.
strike, occurring as Charles managed a grueling cancer treatment,
And he's got nothing to bully
created a
Edward
fierce
about as
internal
much, has he?
debate. Supporters of Edward
That's the thing
argued
with
that
King
he had
Charles,
no
that's why he's
choice.
backing that.
Law
That's why
does not wait for a
because
convenient
Edward's not
time.
got.
If Charles
King
had been
Charles
allowed to
hasn't
finalize
much
the
to
consolidation of the
fucking
estates,
go on with
the
Edward.
1,947
Edward's not as bad as
protections
King Charles,
might
he
have been
hasn't-
waived by precedent.
he's not the
Edward was
corrupted
acting
one
as
like
the sovereign
Charles.
sentry, fulfilling a secret order
There's
from
always
Juan
one in the
Elizabeth
litter that
to
ain't
ensure the family's
that are
survival,
different,
regardless
like
of
me.
the king's personal
I'm
health.
different to all the rest
Critics
of my
within the
family.
Camilla circle view this as
They've
a
all got something wrong
cold-blooded
with them.
tactical
I'm the only
move.
one that's
They
not.
see a younger brother using the king's
their
vulnerability to
circle
carve out
of
his
all
own
that stuff.
financial empire, while the king's attention is divided. They point to the 30 years of Edward's loyalty as a long-game strategy to gain the queen's ultimate trust
Yeah.
and the key to the vault.
I'm
To
glad
understand
they've done
Edward's
that.
new role,
Us.
one must look at Princess Anne.
Yeah.
She has long operated as an untouchable within the family, managing the
Anne's
agricultural and
always
equestrian
alright,
legacies with absolute autonomy.
I
She
thought,
is the Iron Shield. The Queen's masterstroke was giving Edward a similar functional domain. While Anne guards the tradition and the land, Edward now guards the legal and financial fine
Good.
print. The 1,947 letters patent turned a quiet man into a constitutional sentinel. By the time the King's External Council finished their review, the verdict was clear. The 1,947 provisions were active and enforceable. The King could not override his brother's veto without a public legal battle that would clear the institution apart. The Vungmart Queen Lurk, the power of the absent queen,
he was going to
had won.
sell everything down the river to
spoken.
Islam.
And the king was
Of
forced to
everything
go
the Queen was
very,
done.
very quiet.
And Albert,
As the
Prince
legal
Albert's done.
dust settled in the
I
early
don't
months of
particularly like the Queen. I'm not
2024,
the
the halls
best
of
of fans
Buckingham
of her,
Palace
really,
remained
but
quiet, but it was a silence born of resolution rather than confusion.
well, then
The
maybe this
External
one thing
Council's
might
verdict
help me
was
change
absolute.
a bit of my
The
mind.
1,947 letters
right.
patent were not merely historical artifacts. They were active constitutional anchors.
Good.
King Charles III, facing the dual burden of his crown and his health, was forced to accept a reality he had not envisioned at his coronation. The administrative streamlining of the private estates, widely seen as a project influenced by Queen Camilla's vision for a consolidated monarchy, had hit an immovable object. That object was the Edinburgh veto,
Having to think
a
about
legal
that
power
horrible-
revived by a mother's foresight and an absent father's signature. Prince Edward did not celebrate. True to the character he has maintained for over 30 years, there were no victory laps in the press. No leaked briefings to claim dominance over his brother. He simply returned to his duties, but with a new, invisible weight of authority. By activating the anti-invalidation clauses and the mandatory
William needs your
distribution
help,
provisions
mate.
of the
He needs you to be his
1,947
rock
mandate,
for him.
Edward ensured that the private
William,
wealth of
if he's
Sandringham
good for
and
the king, he
Balmoral
needs you
remained
to be
a
the rock.
protected sanctuary for the Windsor bloodline, legally insulated from any future
carry on being the
restructuring.
rock.
This was
Get
the
rid of
fulfillment
King
of
Charles
his
needs to
role
step
as the
back.
sovereign sentry. Like Princess Anne,
He has to go and
who
change
guards
his
the
religion.
physical and traditional borders of
sorry.
the family's legacy.
He converted to
Edward
Islam.
has
He has
emerged
to
as the
drop
guardian
down.
of the legal
Never mind.
fine print.
Well, if he's got
He
cancer,
proved
he's
that
not
his
well.
30 years of invisibility
If
were
that's
not a
true,
sign of
then
passivity,
He's not
but
well.
a
He should
period
drop
of
down.
deep
Go to
observation and preparation.
and
He
stop
was the
this
only
now.
one worthy of the
He needs to stop ruining anymore
1,947
and
secret,
just-
because he was the only one who would use it as a shield, never as a sword. The debate over Edward's timing challenging a
Step
king
back.
during a cancer battle will likely persist in the annals of royal history.
Or drop
Edward
fucking
saved the
dead.
family from a corporate
Oh, we
consolidation
should chop his
that would have
fucking head off.
eventually marginalized the
End
younger
of.
royals
I don't
and
give a
concentrated
fuck, King
all
Charles.
power
You should
and
get your
wealth
head
in a
chopped off,
single
mate. You brought
vulnerable
Islam
point.
and that into
He
the
acted
church.
with the precision
You
of a
brought
surgeon,
pedophiles.
knowing that if the legal window closed, the Queen's protections would be lost
And
forever.
trafficking
Critics will always see the
the
tactical
church.
ambush. They will argue that he leveraged a moment of extreme weakness to secure a financial principality that Charles would have never granted under
He's
normal
allowed the devil
circumstances.
into
However,
the
the
church.
evidence leans toward the architect's
God.
plan. Queen Elizabeth
And people go
II
there
did
to
not
get
leave an
peace.
explanatory
Or
letter.
one piece.
She left a legal instrument.
And he's not leaving
She
any
knew
peace.
that by the time the
He's-
1,947 provisions were
Yeah,
needed,
He's
she would be
correct.
gone. And the only thing that would hold up against the
ruined
Camilla factor
everything.
or the king's own impulses was the cold, hard law of the letters patent. In the end,
No,
this
he's
story
not
is about
going
the
for that.
Vungmart
He's
Queen,
ruined everything
the
Queen
power of the
Elizabeth. I'm
Vungmart,
sorry
absent
to say that
monarch.
about your son, Queen
Elizabeth
He's
II
ruined
ruled for
everything
70
now.
years
He
by
has to
understanding
step
that
back.
people change,
He's
but
got-
documents remain.
He's got
She
to
saw the
stop.
rise of
Queen
Camilla,
Elizabeth, please.
the illness
Queen
of her
Elizabeth,
son,
please.
and the potential fractures
I'm
in her
asking
house.
you, God.
By conferring the
God,
Edinburgh
Queen
title on
Elizabeth,
Edward
God,
in 2022,
please.
she reached out from the future to protect her family's
King
past.
Charles has
The
to
king's
get
quietness after receiving the legal letter was the ultimate acknowledgement of his mother's superior
Oh, go to
strategy.
hell
He
for
realized
himself.
that he was not just fighting a brother, he was facing the combined will of Philip and Elizabeth. The Mutni
Yeah,
Chin
if it does
Chang
that, it goes to
Bunluwei.
hell.
Suckling Vunquin remains
He
the
needs
silent
to
law
go.
of the land. The quiet prince is now the sentinel of the Windsor Vault, and the legacy of the British royal family is, for now, legally safe behind the fine print of a 75-year-old document.
King Elizabeth, she's a bitch.
So I asked whether Andy.
Oh God, I'm not watching him as I can't stand him. Well, that was kind of good. Oh, what's happened here?
Princess Anne never wanted to be a princess from a fairy tale, an extraordinary woman who
Oh, it will shock us all, because they're all shocking. Look.
I'll tell you what, yesterday I saw
And
something
King Charles gave him
completely
a night
shocking.
off.
It nearly spat out my chocolate buttons and half an Easter egg. And that was this tweet from the Mayor of London, Sadiq
I can't
Khan.
stand the cunt.
We know
Nothing
all
to do
of
with his
the
colour, I just can't stand him. Looking at him.
controversy
You look at him
surrounding
there,
the
he
city
either
and
looks
the state
orange
of
or he
London,
looks like
and
he's
we
on
know
coke.
everything
What
else.
countries?
But he's turned around and said, "Happy Easter."
Oh, did
what?
it? What? And the
I
king
nearly
won't say
fell
Happy
over with
Easter.
shock.
Oh,
And
so
let's,
he's saying
let's
Happy
make
Easter,
this
but
a
the
bit
king
bigger.
won't, so who's he
Happy Easter to
offending?
everyone
Who is King Charles
celebrating in
offending? King
London
Charles
with
isn't
the
even here, is he?
festivities.
Passed
Let's
away.
remember the message of hope
Has he
in his
passed away,
heart.
King
No
Charles?
matter the challenge we face, there's always a light on the horizon.
And that's why I can't do a
Thank you to our
message.
Christian communities for helping build
They'll want to just use
kinder
AI
city.
anyway, wouldn't they?
My
Just to
God, wonders
say
never
what's there.
cease. And as always, you can't actually reply to that at all. So it's typical lefty behaviour, making remarks and comments and not allowing any room for anybody to reply
What's wrong with
back.
him? What drugs is he
Somebody
been
might have
on?
actually said Happy Easter,
What's
you
the
never
deep can
know.
on?
Well, let's
Can we
have a
have
listen
some?
to this. There is
Yeah.
a soundtrack to the back of this, and I'm going to mute
Go
it.
ahead, laugh at it.
No,
you're
it's got
welcome.
subtitles. Every time I play something
Really?
from the Mayor of
I'm
London,
happy
for
with
some
that.
reason, I end up with a bleeding copyright strike. So let's negate that. Happy Easter to all those celebrating this weekend, in particular our Christian friends here in London and around the
he's
world.
doing that because he's got
Well,
the Church of England
heavens
now,
to
hasn't he?
Betsy.
King Charles has given. I'll tell you
The
why he's
story
doing
of
it.
Jesus'
He's-
resurrection teaches us
He's
that
not
no
doing
matter
it for
how
anyone.
bleak the
He's doing
situation,
that because he's got
hope is always
Church
just
of
around
England
the
now, hasn't he?
corner. We
He's
can
got
take
everything.
inspiration
Mosques.
from the life
He's
and
got all
lessons
the
of
things he
Jesus.
wants. Because King Charles has given him a knighthood. Look,
I can't quite
Fucking
believe my eyes.
Charles.
Has there been redemption?
has allowed him
Look at it.
into the mosque, into the Church of England, and the mosque. King Charles' fault. With him, give him a knighthood. Why would King Charles give him a knighthood? After
One
after
thing
what
I
I've just
love
watched
with
me
clips
about
like this
Edward, I mean King Charles,
Is
Queen
all the
Elizabeth is completely right.
choreography involved.
He
all of
sold
the,
us down the river to this,
You know,
to this track.
setups and hugs
This
and
weirdo.
everything else.
This
It's not fooling me for a
fucking
second.
weirdo
But
of
one
a
thing I find very
weirdo.
striking
He's a
is that for
weirdo.
somebody like Sadiq Khan to tell
He's not doing it
around
out
and
the
say
good of
Happy
his
Easter,
heart.
where
a
our
lie,
own
mate.
monarch, King
No.
Charles,
I was just said
can't
that.
bring himself to deliver an Easter message.
Yeah,
it
it's a bit
really is
senseless,
quite
isn't
telling.
it? What's going on?
But
King
I don't
Charles passed
take
away.
Khan's
I
words
think
or
King
anything
Charles has
as
passed away, that's why I
sincere
can't
at
go see
all. I
Donald
really
Trump.
don't. This is all
I think King Charles has passed away,
you know,
that's why I can't go
political
see Donald Trump.
manoeuvring and it's fine.
Why can't I go see Donald Trump?
Wow.
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 What? He's only going out, he's not that ill.
One of the
He's listening in
things that
hospital.
does come out
Well,
is
it'd be nice for them
that
to share them
message of
things.
hope. I
That's just
suppose, you know,
personal,
it's a very
personal.
important thing for everybody.
It's meant to be our
You've got
king.
to maintain
So
that
I'm
hope.
going to say it's
because if
nice
you
for them to
lose
share
that
things
hope,
like
then
that. We
you
should be
lose
allowed to
everything,
know
that
them.
little pinprick
Is
of
it
light at the end of the
hospital
tunnel. That's very important. And if you look at
like you
London,
say,
our capital
I mean,
city,
they shouldn't
England's
tell us them
capital
things, so it
city,
stops
you
people
look at how
from
it's changed
gossiping and
over
saying evil things.
generations.
Things
You
you've
look
got wrong, or
particularly
things you
over
might
the
think
last
you don't know
decade,
and
maybe
you
a
think
little
you
bit
do know,
more,
or
how
whatever.
it's changed. The
Yeah.
change in the people, the change in the streets, the
I mean,
change
they
in the
used
culture,
to have the
the
royal
change in
family
the
where
atmosphere.
they did
The
show us
change
when they
in
was
the
eating breakfast and dinner, and I
feeling
wish
of
they would
safety
do
when
that
you walk
again.
around. It's
Yeah, but I
certainly
wish
not
the
the
royal
London it
family would
used
be
to
a
be.
bit more like that
So,
again.
Happy Easter
Be
indeed.
like the people.
So, what do we make of this?
Nobody has to
You
be
know,
all,
let's
like I
drill
said, nobody has
down
to
a
be
little
all
bit
right. Do you know what it is,
into
mate?
why.
They don't have to be all this stuck up shit, yeah. I mean, we know they're rich and we know they've got lots of money and we know they're not going to like somebody like me. We know when you're a commoner, you know, someone in the poor, you know. And that's why Princess Diana was so... That's why she means a lot still to someone like me, and I didn't really know of her. I mean, I don't even know who she is. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't even know who she is. And I was only young when she was murdered in Paris thingy by the fucking king or whatever had happened. I think it was about 14 or something. And I'm 43 now. And Princess Diana still means a lot to people. She does. And she was the only one that was for the people. That was for the poor, the people. She was in Africa. She was around the poor children in Africa, doing for the poor. And she was the only person that was for the people. That was like, not normal, not quite normal. But she'd go back to Spencer's, I'd go bloody Asda or Tesco, you know, the cheapest Aldi, Lidl or whatever. So she remember going, you know, the posh places where I'm going, Aldi, Lidl, but that's not the point. The point is they're meant to be the king, the queen. It's meant to be kind of special. And they've ruined that for children and everybody. They've ruined the fairy tale side of it as well. You know, the magically fairy tale sides about being queen, being the king, and, you know, in the palace, in this, he's ruined everything. And Queen Elizabeth, please, Prince Albert, this has got to stop with him. We've got to put stop with this. I mean, he don't want to go see Donald Trump. Right, he might not particularly like Donald Trump, he might not be his best fan. Okay, I get that part. But that doesn't mean to say he cannot go and see the president. He should be going to see the president to sort the country out. To sort this illegal migrant stuff out and different things and faith and respect for the country, respect for America, respect for the Commonwealth, respect for the world. That's what King Charles is meant to be doing. Respecting the country, but not just respecting England, respecting the world, respecting other people's faiths, yeah. I'm not saying he can't respect Islam and Muslims or anything like that. Nobody, and Africa, India, any Israel or whatever, nobody, he don't respect Israel. He don't respect Christians, he don't respect Israel, he don't respect Africa. The only thing I see King Charles doing is respect for Islam, the religion of Islam. That's the only thing I see him kind of respecting him, which is he can't change his religion. It's in the Bible. He just should know. People want to know by seeing the Bible, he's opened Pandora's box. The Pandora's box is the devil. The devil is poltergeist. Poltergeist is the ultimate fucking devil. When you shut the door completely on God and sin the Bible like King Charles has done, there is no going back. God can't help King Charles ever again to save him. That's it. He's gone. He's not gone to be he's not gone to the devil. He is the devil. King Charles is the devil. He is poltergeist. My name's Caroline. I've got blonde hair. I used to be the little girl in the mirror with a little phone. And people used to, my mum said, poltergeist is going to come and get you, Caroline. And they did, because they abused me when I was a child. So that was poltergeist. And they trafficked me out all my life. And they took my little girl and took everything away from me. So that is poltergeist, the devil. He traps you in any way they can to get you and take over you. The devil is taking over King Charles. The devil spirit is not. The poltergeist spirit is gone within inside King Charles. Whereas God's spirit has gone within inside Rupert Lowe. God's spirit is within Rupert Lowe. I can see that, right? Now, poltergeist's spirit has gone within King Charles.
Why I think it's insincere. Let's be honest about who Sadiq Khan is. He's a Muslim mayor in a city that's still.
Why would King Charles give him a knighthood after the grooming gangs and everything else that Sadiq Khan's done? Even Donald Trump called Sadiq Khan the worst mayor in the world. And King Charles can't even go and face Donald Trump. Prince Edward would be. It's a shame for Prince Edward. I am sorry about Prince Edward, actually. I mean, I don't particularly like all the royal family. Not really particularly green, everything, they're all rich and just stuck up, whatever, but probably out of all of them, actually. out Prince Anne and all of them, it has always been Prince and Edward, really, hasn't it? Andrew was a baby, the youngest one, I think, innit? You've got King Charles first, and you've got Prince Anne in it, then Edward, then Andrew. And be all like you say, all me fair, it's a shame for Prince Edward. It's a shame that he didn't become the king. It's such a shame. And that's what Queen Elizabeth's saying, and Prince Albert are saying. They wish it was Edward that was the king. Because at least Prince Edward would have this stuff. Well, I think he'd be able to handle it all a lot better, and he'd have this. And he wouldn't be having this into the Church of England. I can tell you that now. I don't think he would. I think, okay, I'm not saying he don't have to respect Islam. Yes, of course you've got to respect Islam. He's the King of England. You've got to respect every other country and every other religion. And every, other people. You've got to have that kind of thing. Like, you're a professional person thing. This is not, like you said, it's not a fucking joke. It is serious. Yeah, it's very serious. Yeah, and Prince Edward, I don't think he's changed to be in Islam. I don't think Prince Edward has changed his religion. I think Prince Edward, he might not practice Christianity. I'm not saying I don't practice Christianity. I don't go to church. I've not been to a church because I